"Handsome guy, please, I beg you, save my wife." In the middle of the night, a weasel as large as 3 grown men was kneeling at the head of my bed. Lu Chuan, a former chief surgeon, was now so terrified I wanted to crawl under the covers and cry for my mother. I stared into his oily, beady eyes, my voice trembling. "Big brother, I wield a scalpel. I don't deliver babies. You've got the wrong person, haven't you?" This weasel, known as Huang De, kept kowtowing frantically. "The villagers all say you're amazing. I beg you, save my wife and children. I'll do anything for you, be your servant for life." Looking at his expression, as if he were about to burst into tears, that old psychological scar of mine flared up again. Half a month ago, when that 25-year-old young man died on my operating table, his family had begged me the same way. Since then, whenever I saw a scalpel, my hands would shake as if I had Parkinson's. I looked away and said firmly, "I'm no longer a doctor. Leave." I kicked Huang De out the door. I shut the back door, but there was no movement outside. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind filled with that deceased patient and the curses of his family members. The feeling of being unable to sleep night after night was unbearable. If no one helped, those lives, mother and children, would really be gone. The moment that thought surfaced, I couldn't help but open the door again. Huang De hadn't left. He was sitting dejectedly in the mud. Seeing me come out, his beady eyes lit up like 2 small light bulbs. "Quick! Carry your wife into my yard." My small courtyard in the woods was a typical northern dwelling. The room was filled with the scent of disinfectant, mixed with the smell of old wood. I quickly spread a layer of sterile cloth on the table, treating it as a temporary operating room, when Huang De rushed in with her on his back. The female weasel's belly was bulging high. She no longer had the strength to cry out, her whole body shivering from the pain. Outside, the tree shadows danced wildly on the window paper, making me feel restless. My heart was racing, but professional instinct forced me to stay calm. I pulled out my surgical kit from the bottom of a trunk and disinfected the fur on her belly. I dialed the number of my former roommate from the OBGYN department. He answered groggily. I quickly explained the situation. With his remote guidance, I finally felt a bit more confident. "Listen up. I have to perform surgery on your wife. Whether she lives is up to fate." I took a deep breath, gripped the scalpel, and under the dim light, my hands started to tremble uncontrollably again. At that moment, I felt like I was back at that operating table. The pressure was mounting. I gritted my teeth to steady my hand, and made the first incision through the skin. Strangely, a faint trace of black mist emerged from the incision. It was bone-chillingly cold. I didn't have time to worry about that. I fixed my eyes on the bleeding points, forcing myself to keep the blade steady. I worked the blade skillfully. Within a few minutes, several wet little creatures slid into the basin. With a soft squeak, Huang Da's wife finally caught her breath and let out a weak cry. 3 chubby little lives were born just as the first light of dawn appeared. Mother and children were safe. Huang Da wept with joy, busy licking the fur of his wife and babies. I took off my bloody gloves and looked at my hands, which had finally stopped shaking. The heavy stone that had been crushing my heart for half a month finally lightened a little. I walked to the balcony. Seeing the day was about to break, I called my old classmate to say they were all safe. "I think I can hold a scalpel again. Do you really plan to stay in that mountain gully forever?" I looked at a bit of blood under my fingernails that hadn't been washed off. I didn't say anything. "Old friend, as doctors, saving lives is our duty. But sometimes fate is truly something we cannot stop. After that incident, I've always been worried. In our profession, we see life and death every day. You can't just accept life and reject death. Everyone has their own destiny." "I know. So, do you plan to come back?" I gazed at the fading morning mist on the horizon, unconsciously, falling silent. "Hey, I just asked casually. To be honest, I want to quit too. I'm busy as a dog every day. I don't know what's going on this year, but there are more pregnant women than we can handle." I hung up the phone, watching the rising sun. I turned back into the house. Huang Nana, the wife, was still resting in the temporary nest I built. I spread some hay in the corner of the yard and sprinkled some disinfectant around, letting the family of 5 stay there for the time being. 2 days later, at dawn, my grandmother started shouting at the door. She pointed at a pheasant with a broken neck, laying at the entrance, asking me curiously, "Chuan Chuan, come look. Where did this pheasant come from?" I scanned along the yard wall, and surely enough saw a small head peeking out from behind the millstone. Huang De was staring at me intently with his beady eyes, his tail twitching instinctively. Maybe some relative sent it to the wrong house. Grandmother gave me a knowing look. Sending a gift right to the front door? Since no one's claiming it, this chicken is quite plump. Every day when we opened the door, there was inevitably a pheasant lying there. Sometimes there were even 2 fat field mice. Having eaten pheasant for 3 days, even my burps smelled like chicken feathers. I couldn't take it anymore, so I cornered Huangda and told him never to bring chickens again. We were practically turning into chickens. Huangda tilted his head thoughtfully, as if he understood. The next day, the bloody offerings at the door disappeared. They were replaced by a small pile of bright red mountain fruits, still glistening with dew. Hey! Hey! Chuan Chuan! That's a weasel immortal, isn't it? I saw them a couple of days ago. These things must be their rent for staying here. I'm not sure. You know, these little creatures are truly spiritual. How could they not be? He doesn't just pay rent. He can even speak human language. In the following days, the very spiritual Huangda worked from dawn till dusk, sending a variety of gifts, from wild berries to unknown medicinal herbs. Huangda's wife's incision, under my care, healed remarkably fast. Before long, she could lead the cubs crawling all over the place. Finally, one evening, Huangda brought his whole family to say goodbye. He said they were heading back to the forest on the back mountain. After seeing off this group of unusual patients, my life finally returned to normal. However, this peace only lasted a few days. In the dead of a dark, windy night, that familiar knocking sounded again. Thinking it was Huangda returning with more gifts, I went to open the door with a sigh. I told you, I'm not taking rent. I froze mid-sentence. It wasn't Huangda at the door. Instead, there was a wall of furry, bright red hair. It was a behemoth over 2 meters tall, its fur shimmering with a dark red glow under the moonlight. 2 emerald eyes glowed like night lights. Seeing it, I shuddered instantly. Its massive shadow completely enveloped me. The pressure was so heavy I almost knelt on the spot. I stayed motionless, my mind screaming for help. This thing could swallow 3 of me in one bite. The giant monster spoke first. Are you the miracle doctor who saved the Huang family? I was trembling too hard to answer. Is he a mute? The giant monster lowered its head, shifting its gaze downward. Following its gaze, I saw beneath its massive paw a shivering little creature. Looking closer, it was Huangda, who had only left a few days ago. I found my voice. Do you need something from me? The monster didn't answer. Instead, it opened its blood-red maw, revealing rows of grim tusks. My heart stopped. This is it. It's dinner time. Before I could scream, my feet left the ground. I was lifted up. He tossed me onto his back, like a small cub. Then he scooped up the dazed Huangda and stuffed him into the thick red fur beside me. Hold on tight. Then, this red-haired monster dashed off like the wind, carrying me deep into the back mountain forest. The wind was biting cold, stinging my face. My limbs were numb from the cold. I could only clutch his red fur desperately. Lying on his back, I tremulously asked Huangda what was going on. Huangda was just as confused, curled into a ball. He replied, Chi Jiu suddenly burst into my home to find me, demanding I lead him to you for an emergency. Chi Jiu? This red-haired fox was named Chi Jiu? As we ran, we passed an abandoned temple on the back mountain. No one went there anymore. Half the walls had collapsed. Under the pale moonlight, I saw a headless statue on the altar. The clay-molded head had fallen to the ground at some point. It was tilted to the side, its hollow eyes staring fixedly at the direction we were headed. The sight made my skin crawl. Clinging to Chi Jiu's broad back, I was tossed around in the red fur as he sprinted. Cold wind whipped into my collar. I felt like every bone in my body was about to be shaken apart by this extreme speed. I don't know how long we ran, but the heavy footsteps finally slowed down. The air no longer smelled of rotting leaves. Instead, a crisp, cold fragrance emerged, like expensive agarwood, mixed with the scent of wild mountain grass. In the darkness, pairs of glowing green eyes lit up like ghost fires, accompanied by dense, whispering voices. Why did old Nine bring back a 2-legged beast? This human looks tender and thin-skinned. He must be delicious. Are you crazy? He actually dared to bring a human to the sacred den. My heart sank. Had I been brought straight to the fox spirit's lair? I was finished. Lu Chuan, you're not here to save anyone this time. You're just a delivery order. Chi Jiu ignored the chatter and dragged me further ahead. He stopped before a massive cave. He lowered his body, let me down, and spoke toward the interior in a muffled voice. Mother, I found someone who can save Big Brother. From the depths of the cave, several foxes of different colors walked out slowly. The one in the lead was even more imposing than Chijo, exuding an aura of inviolable majesty. What nearly made my eyes pop out was that 3 long, fluffy tails trailed behind her, swaying gently in the air. The pressure was so intense my legs started to cramp. This was Chijo's mother, the authority of this mountain. Surrounded by this pack of foxes, my long-dormant megalophobia flared up instantly. Qingyi's emerald eyes stared at me without blinking, as silent as an ancient stone statue. The cold sweat on my back soaked my shirt, dried and soaked it again. The surrounding foxes suddenly broke into a frenzy, arguing incessantly. Big Brother is injured so badly. How could a human possibly heal him? I say we should just eat him while he's fresh. This was a fierce-looking fox with fire-red fur. Let's just call him number 2. What if he can heal him? Didn't that Huang kid say? This human has some real skill? This was another gray fox who looked more composed. The two sides argued until they were red in the face, and no one cared about the fate of the person involved, me. You don't know Jack. You know nothing. You're the one who knows nothing. I was screaming internally. Big Brothers, can you just give me a straight answer? Are you going to braise me or stew me? Don't just have this hospice care debate. Right in front of me, just as my brain was about to fry, the silent matriarch finally spoke. Her voice was low and elegant, yet carried the inherent deterrence of a ruler. Human, look up. I reflexively lifted my chin, meeting those deep emerald eyes. Huang De said, you cut open his wife's belly to save a litter of cubs. Is that so? I nodded frantically, my throat too dry to make a sound. Qingyi asked slowly, using your human methods? Correct. I continued to nod, like a sewing machine. Qingyi fell into a long silence. The giant fox head lowered slightly, as if weighing the pros and cons. The air seemed to freeze, the oppression making it hard to breathe. That number 2, seeing her hesitation, let out an impatient growl. His drool almost dripped onto my shoe. Brother, could you be a bit more reserved? You're supposed to be a fox immortal. Show some class. Old 9. Take him in. Qingyi finally gave the order. Chijo let out a huge sigh of relief. Number 2 was unhappy, and shrieked, Mother, you really trust this human? What if he tries something during the surgery? Qingyi shot him a cold glance. Number 2. If your brain were as active as your salivary glands, you wouldn't be so useless even now. Number 2 was silenced instantly, retreating sulkily to a corner to play with his tail. I followed Chijo into the cave. Huang De scrambled along at my feet, muttering softly, Don't be afraid, doctor. Qingyi and the others are very reasonable. Their reason probably is, if you heal him, you're a genius. If you fail, you're an appetizer. Inside the cave, the sight took me by surprise. The cave was not dark at all. The stone walls were covered in glowing moss, lighting the place up like daylight. The air was filled with a strange scent, wild musk mixed with expensive agarwood. The further we went, the stronger the smell of thick blood and rot became. In the largest stone grotto, I saw their eldest brother, Bai Chun. He was an adult-sized white fox, lying weakly on a stone bed. His once snowy white fur was matted and stained with dark, blackish blood. Most terrifyingly, one of his front legs was twisted at a bizarre, unnatural angle. The wound was deep enough to show bone. Even stranger, the wound was actually emitting wisps of black smoke. This was an aura of evil miasma. With one look, my professional instinct overrode my fear. My brows knit together tightly. Big Brother. Chiju rushed over, carefully nuzzling Bai Chen's nose. Bai Chun barely opened his golden eyes, letting out a weak breath. He couldn't even make a sound. I stepped forward, kneeling down to examine the wound. Number 2 jumped out again, baring his teeth. What are you doing? Get back. I ignored him, looking directly at Chijo. I need to see the wound up close. Otherwise, I can't tell if he can be saved. Chijo growled at number 2. Only then did number 2 reluctantly back away, glaring at me, like I was a quack doctor about to commit a crime. I put on the last pair of sterile gloves from my kit and gently parted the fur around the wound.
周围黏糊糊的毛发。
At that moment, an icy, sinister chill shot from my fingertips to my brain, making me shiver. In the center of the deep wound, a black, shiny scale the size of a millstone was embedded. The edges of the scale were as sharp as a blade. The surrounding muscle tissue had turned black and necrotic, spreading outward along with the black smoke. Corrosion. What was he wounded by? My voice was trembling slightly. It wasn't fear. It was shock at such a bizarre injury. Chijo's eyes flared with anger. It was He Yenya, that venomous eagle king. He used that evil scale to strike my brother. I understood now. This wasn't a normal laceration. It was a complex wound. Because of the miasma contamination on the scale, the wound couldn't heal itself. Instead, it acted like a corrosive agent, consuming his life force. The situation was worse than I thought. I took a deep breath and spoke the truth. The toxin and miasma are already spreading. If we wait another hour, not only will he lose the leg, he'll lose his life too. The atmosphere in the cave dropped to freezing point. Dozens of pairs of fox eyes stared at me in unison. Qingyi had walked up behind me at some point, her massive shadow looming over me. How certain are you? My mind raced. Debridement, removal of necrotic tissue, purging the miasma. According to modern medical logic, as long as the source of contamination is removed and combined with spiritual purification, there is a chance. But the problem was, I wasn't facing a normal patient, and my damn hand tremors were starting again. I clenched my fists, trying to make my voice sound steady. I have to perform surgery, pull out the scale, and cut away all the rotten flesh. The risk is high. I don't have anesthesia suitable for his size. He'll have to endure it. Furthermore, I need absolutely clean hot water, hemostatic herbs, and the sharpest blade you have. Whatever you need, I can provide. But if you fail, Qingyi stared at me, her gaze seemingly piercing my soul. She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew. The foxes outside were already lining up, ready for lunch. I gave a bitter laugh. If I fail, I don't plan on leaving this cave alive anyway. I looked at Bai Chun on the stone bed. He was looking back at me. In his golden eyes, there was not a hint of fear of death. Instead, there was a strange sense of calm and trust. That look, the 25-year-old young man who died on the operating table. He had looked at me exactly like that at the end. He was entrusting me with his hope, and I had let a patient die before. Stop it, Lu Chuan. I gritted my teeth and muttered to myself. You're here to save a life, not to wait for death. I looked up, my gaze colder and sharper than ever. Prepare the supplies. Surgery starts now. The fox's efficiency was staggering. Very quickly, they set up a massive stone pot, filled it with spring water, and brought it to a rolling boil. A few nimble little foxes brought a pile of polished, razor-sharp stone flakes. The texture of the stones was unique, their edges glinting with a cold light, no less sharp than my surgical scalpels. I threw all the stone flakes and tweezers into the boiling water to sterilize them. As the lead surgeon, I looked at Chijo. You and the others hold him down. He absolutely must not move. Otherwise, if the blade slips, there will be no saving him. Chijo nodded heavily, pressing his weight onto Bai Chen's torso. Several other large foxes pinned down the forelimbs. It will hurt a lot. Hold on. Bai Chen closed his eyes slightly. In response, when I picked up the scalding hot stone, the moment I felt the texture of his flesh, my hands began to tremble uncontrollably again. Auditory hallucinations flooded in like a tide. Lu Chuan, give me back my son's life. You don't deserve that white coat. My vision began to blur. The white fox's fur seemed to turn into that unstoppable red blood on the operating table. Huang Da's urgent voice rang in my ear. I don't know where he found it, but he held a piece of spirit-soothing grass, emitting a faint green light directly under my nose. An icy cold fragrance surged into my lungs, like a bucket of ice water being poured over me, instantly scattering those nightmarish noises. I snapped out of it, meeting Bai Chen's golden eyes again. As he waited quietly, he didn't speak, but he was waiting for me. My grandmother used to say that people like me were born for this profession. As long as the heart is calm, the hand will be steady. Why shouldn't I believe in myself? I closed my eyes, forcing all the fear and guilt deep into the bottom of my heart. When I opened them again, the world was clear. My hand was finally steady. I began. As the blade fell, I cleanly and decisively sliced through the layer of fibrous, necrotic flesh. Bai Chun let out a low, extremely suppressed grunt. His whole body convulsed violently. Chi Zhou and the others desperately pinned his paws down, their claws leaving deep marks in the ground. Dark purple blood mixed with black smoke gushed out. I didn't hesitate for a second, my concentration higher than it had ever been. I was drenched in sweat, droplets falling from the tip of my nose. Huangde stood by, cleverly using a dry cloth to wipe my brow. Finally, my stone flake touched the hard foreign object. Found it, using 2 long stone flakes as makeshift tweezers. I carefully probed deep into the wound, firmly gripping the edge of that black scale. The scale seemed almost alive, still vibrating slightly inside Bai Chen's flesh. Hold him tight. I let out a roar, and yanked upward with all my strength. The palm-sized scale was forcibly pulled from his body. The moment the scale left his body, a thick surge of purplish-black miasma erupted frantically, then gradually dissipated under the glow of the fluorescent moss. I didn't dare stop. I immediately took the boiled herbal water and flushed the wound vigorously. Then, using small stone flakes, I scraped away the remaining rot bit by bit. Not until the blood flowing from the wound turned from dark purple to bright red did I feel the air finally start flowing back into my lungs. Water! Quick! Give him some water, I shouted. Bai Chen's breathing was very weak, a sign of impending shock from blood loss and extreme pain. The most critical step was next. The wound was too large. Ointments alone wouldn't hold it together, but I didn't have any suture needles or thread strong enough for foxhide. I was sweating profusely from anxiety, my palms cold with nervous sweat. Just then, Qing Yi, who had been standing by, walked over. One of the tails behind her suddenly emitted a faint silver glow. Finally, an extremely long and fine silver hair detached itself, fluttered in the air for a moment, and transformed into a suture needle threaded with glowing silver line. Use this. Qing Yi's voice sounded a bit weak. This is my origin hair. It can transform into anything and lock in life force. I was stunned. I couldn't imagine how much cultivation cost her to produce this. To save her son, this 3-tailed fox had truly staked everything on me. I didn't hesitate, and took the silver needle, which felt as warm as jade. This was the most incredible suturing session of my career. The needle tip pierced through Bai Chen's flesh effortlessly. The silver thread interlaced across the wound, like a healing melody. My movements were slow and deliberate. Each stitch was perfectly spaced and aligned. When the last knot was tied, I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted, panting heavily. I felt like my soul had been drained. The surgery was a success. I watched as Bai Chen fell into a deep sleep. Though his breathing was light, it had become steady. His pale nose had even regained a hint of color. He survived. The cave was deathly silent. Hundreds of foxes maintained their positions, watching everything in stunned silence. A moment later, Qizhou walked over and lowered his majestic head. Carefully and gently he nuzzled my cheek. He felt fuzzy and carried the freshness of the mountains. He smelled warm. Then came number 2, the guy who wanted to eat me just now. He walked up to me dejectedly and bowed his head low, as if apologizing for his earlier rudeness. Then all the foxes in the cave prostrated themselves in my direction simultaneously. It was a silent but heavy as a mountain show of gratitude. I sat on the cold ground, looking at my bloody hands, and that silver needle still emitting a faint glow. Suddenly, I started laughing. As I laughed, tears began to fall uncontrollably. I saved him. Lu Chuan, you're still a doctor. You can still save people. No, you can still save lives. I stayed in the Spirit Fox Cave for 3 days. Those 3 days were much more comfortable than my days as a surgeon in the city. When I was thirsty, there was honey the foxes found from somewhere. It was sweet and had quite a kick to it. When I was hungry, there was roasted, sizzling game meat and various wild fruits I couldn't name, but were crunchy, sweet, and juicy. My sleeping area was covered with a thick layer of hay, with a layer of incredibly soft, unknown fur on top. Lying on it was incredibly soft and comfortable. I thought to myself, this isn't suffering. This is basically the animal version of a Hilton presidential suite. Bai Chen's physical constitution was absurdly strong. By the 3rd morning, that leg, which had been wounded to the bone, could already move bit by bit. The layer of snow-white fur on his body had regained its luster, except for the thin silver scar. You could hardly tell he had been standing at death's door just a few days ago. He walked up to me, and in those golden eyes, the previous pain was gone. They were filled with warm gratitude. Thank you, human. The divine doctor Bai Chen spoke. His voice was clear and pleasant, like the mountain spring water. I was looking down, organizing my medical kit, and replied without looking up, "You're welcome. It's just a doctor's job." After saying that, I froze. After resigning and returning to the village, I thought I would never say the phrase, "a doctor's job." for the rest of my life, and yet it came out so naturally. Qing Yi was much more polite to me now, no longer looking at me, like she was ready to make an example out of me. She told me that they were a lineage from the Qingqiu mountain range. The phantom crimson foxes. They had guarded this forest for hundreds of years. As for that eagle king from Black Cliff, he was their archenemy, always wanting to seize this territory. I listened in a daze, feeling like I hadn't just crossed a border, but had also accidentally become a live audience member for a supernatural tale. Before I left, Qing Yi called out to me. She handed me a long, reddish leaf. Faint light flowed through its veins, looking like a fire that wouldn't burn out. This is miasma-eating grass. It can neutralize all toxins and ward off evil spirits. I was about to refuse, but Qing Yi's emerald eyes looked deeply into mine. Take it, Lu Chuan. Your spiritual energy is pure. In these wilds, it's easy to attract things that shouldn't be provoked. Keep it for safety. My heart skipped a beat. Pure spiritual energy? I didn't know I had such a metaphysical constitution. Before I could ask for details, Qing Yi turned and went back into the cave, leaving behind only a faint scent of cool sandalwood. Qi Zhou took it upon himself to escort me home. A 2-meter-tall red fox walking beside me. The sense of intimidation was immense. Even the other creatures in the woods gave us a wide berth. As we approached the old locust tree at the village entrance, Qi Zhou stopped. If you ever need me, shout Qi Zhou 3 times at this tree. I'll hear you. I nodded, and looking at his big, fuzzy head, I couldn't resist reaching out and giving him a pet. He felt great. Qi Zhou wagged his tail innocently. After thinking for a moment, he added, My eldest brother is Bai Chan. My second brother is Qi Er. And you can just call my mother Qing Yi. My mouth twitched. Your family's naming sense is really something. Qi Zhou didn't get my dry humor, simply grinning and showing a row of white teeth. His smile was quite bright. When I returned to my little yard in the woods, the sky was just starting to brighten. My grandmother was opening her door, preparing to get tools from the shed. The moment she looked up, she froze in place. This was quite a spectacle. Grandmother squinted her eyes. There wasn't a hint of fear in her voice. I, however, almost fell over. Good grief, my clean little yard had practically become a mountain goods wholesale market. Stacked by the wall were 3 fat wild chickens, and a wild boar that weighed at least dozens of pounds. There were also 2 bundles of rare, neatly processed herbs. In a wooden tray, there was a basket of fresh fruits, bright red and glowing. I could smell their sweet fragrance from afar. There was even an unknown mountain bird, flapping its wings as it lined up on the windowsill. A string of sparkling, colorful stones. Your friend is quite generous, Grandmother said with a chuckle, pointing at the wall. I glanced over at the wall, and the sense of absurdity hit its peak. Qi Zhou's massive red head was resting on the edge of the wall. His large emerald eyes were blinking as he sized up my grandmother like a giant, poorly hidden plush ornament. I hurried over, trying to push Qi Zhou's head down, while awkwardly explaining to grandmother, well, that's a friend of mine from deep in the mountains. These are all for our lodging fee. Qi Zhou let out a whimper as I pushed him, shrinking his neck back sheepishly. Grandmother put down her tools, walked to the pile of fruit, picked up an apple and wiped it, then took a long bite. Your friend knows the rules. This fruit is quite sweet. I watched as Qi Zhou ducked back into the woods, looking back every few steps, and the tension in my heart finally eased. Grandmother walked over and brushed some fox fur off my shoulder. Now that you're back, just stay here quietly. The neighbors in the mountains have many rules, but they're easier to get along with than city folk. The shadow in my heart seemed to fade significantly at that moment. Chuan, have you figured things out over the last few days? Looking into grandmother's eyes that saw through the world, I nodded vigorously. Yes, I figured it out. I don't necessarily have to be in the city, on an operating table to save people. As long as I can pick up a blade and preserve a life, even in this little yard in the woods, I am still a doctor. Life seemed to return to normal. Every day I helped grandmother dry herbs in the yard, occasionally going to town to buy supplies. Only my yard became increasingly lively. One day, a basket of dew-covered red fruits would appear at the door. The next day, 2 high-quality wild mountain ginsengs would be on the windowsill. No need to ask, they were all gifts from my fuzzy friends in the back mountains. That kid Huangda would occasionally bring his wife to visit me. The 3 little meatballs were already rolling around the ground, rubbing against my feet. They were so busy that they melted my heart. My former OBGYN roommate called me again. Are you coming back or not? The interns in our department are terrible at suturing. Their hands shake like they have Parkinson's. I'm about to explode. Listening to the complaints on the phone, I walked into the yard and looked at the life around me, then smiled at the misty mountains in the distance. I'm not coming back. Why? Are you really planning to become a hermit in that village? I found new patients here. New patients? In your village? The clinic there doesn't even have an ECG? Does it? I said mysteriously. My patients aren't quite what you imagine. After hanging up, I took a deep breath, the air feeling incredibly fresh. Just then, there was a gentle scratching at the yard gate. I went to open it. A soaking wet little otter was clutching its injured paw, looking at me piteously. Doctor, a crab pinched my paw. It hurts. Its voice was tiny and carried a hint of coldness. I looked down and saw that around the wound, there was indeed a trace of black miasma. Come in. I'll clean it for you first and clear out this foul aura. My rural clinic was open for business again. Days went by. In this strange rhythm, my patients became more and more diverse. There was a silly roe deer that broke its leg. Chijo had knocked it out with one paw and carried it over. There was a little wild pig foaming at the mouth from eating poison. Its mother grunted and nudged it to my door, nearly knocking my yard wall down. And there was a depressed nightingale that sang sad love songs outside my window every day, giving me a headache. I gave it a few days of talk therapy. The main content was listening to me rant about old medical disputes from the hospital. To my surprise, it got better after a few days. It even wanted to set me up with a date, another quite handsome nightingale. Look, it's handsome, right? Thanks, but we're different species. That's really not necessary. You really won't consider it? My medical skills became the gold standard in this mountain range. It wasn't just Chijo and Huangda anymore. My reputation even spread to the neighboring peaks. Late one night, I was awakened by a violent tremor. I thought it was an earthquake and rushed into the yard to check. Good grief, a black bear the size of a small truck was resting its paws on my yard wall, peeking inside. Beside him was a monkey, scratching its head in a panic. Seeing me come out, the monkey chattered and pointed at the bear's leg. I braved the physiological pressure and walked over. The moment the bear opened its mouth, the sky-high bad breath nearly knocked me out. My goodness, this wasn't a bear. It was a biohazard. His teeth were rotten right down to the roots. There were even human candy wrappers stuck between them. How many kids' candies did you steal? The black bear looked aggrieved, curling his massive body into a ball. I have to pull these out. And not just one, I said solemnly. The black bear trembled, a very human-like fear showing on his face. I sighed. I could only ask Chijo for help. I shouted toward the locust tree, and the red shadow instantly dashed to my side. Human, you called for me? When I explained the bear's situation, Chijo laughed. This glutton. Karmic retribution, right? He was quite helpful though, fetching tools from the cave for me. 2 massive, polished stone pincers. Looking at the pincers thicker than my thigh, I fell into deep thought. In the end, I used the most primitive method. I had Chijo and several strong foxes pin the bear down. I tied one end of a sturdy vine to a rotten tooth, and the other end to Chijo's large tail. Chijo, okay? Run forward on my command. 1, 2. With a wretched scream from the bear, a massive bloody tooth flew out. The bear rolled around the ground in pain. Chijo nearly stumbled from the pull on his tail. I picked up the tooth and let out a sigh of relief. Next one. That night, the entire back mountain echoed with the bear's heart-wrenching screams and the fox's gloating laughter. By the time I finished pulling all the rotten teeth and used spiritual energy to clean his gums, the bear was slumped on the ground, having lost all will to live. Remember, no more stealing candy. The bear wept, nodding weakly. From then on, the bear became another one of my bodyguards. Every day, he'd deliver a jar of fresh honey on time, and he would keep an eye on those naughty little monkeys, not letting them mess with my clinic. My life was more leisurely than a retired official's, until an uninvited guest arrived. That day, I was treating a sprained foot for a wild rabbit. The yard gate was kicked open with a bang. At the door stood a middle-aged man wearing a black Taoist robe. He wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, looking refined but with a hidden ruthlessness. He pushed his glasses up, his cold eyes locked onto me, like a venomous snake staring at its prey. You are Lu Chuan? I frowned. Who are you? He didn't answer, but sized me up and down instead. A disturbing curve appeared at the corner of his mouth. As expected, this constitution carries spiritual energy. My scout said. He smelled the scent of white rock jade healing in the mountains. It seems it was your handiwork. With every step he took, I could feel a thick wave of malevolent, dark energy rushing toward me. Who I am isn't important. What's important, Dr. Lu, is that you have this talent. It happens to be of great use to me. You must come with me. Not happening. I refused decisively, my palms already slick with cold sweat. The man sneered. Without him even moving, the black paper talisman in his hand fluttered despite the lack of wind. That is not for you to decide. As his voice fell, the licorice herbs drying on the mats turned black at a visible speed, and finally crumbled into ash. I felt a chill down my spine. This kind of technique was beyond my understanding. What did you do? I was merely clearing away some trash. He looked at me, the greed in his eyes completely undisguised. Two lackeys in black suits stepped out from behind him. They looked like thugs. I instinctively backed away, my heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst through my chest. The moment the two men in black reached for me, a yellow blur flew out from the corner and bit down on one of their wrists. It was Huangda. He bared his teeth, the fur on his back standing completely on end, looking to die. The man waved his hand dismissively, and a blast of black energy sent Huangda flying. He slammed into the yard wall, spitting out a mouthful of blood. My eyes instantly went red with rage. It seems your little friends can't protect you. The man approached step by step. Just then, the ground began to tremble slightly. A heavy, mountain-like pressure flooded in from the gate. The massive body of the black bear blocked the entrance. A low growl emanated from his throat, his normally goofy eyes now full of ferocity. Dozens of silhouettes appeared on the yard wall. Chijo, 12 other foxes, and a pack of ill-intentioned-looking foxes. All stared down the man in the black robe, bearing their sharp claws. Hundreds of birds circled down from the sky, led by that very nightingale. Her sharp chirps carried a clear warning. Even the little water otter, who had just recovered, crawled out of his water basin, snarling and glaring at the man. The man and his followers were completely stunned. The hand he used to adjust his glasses trembled slightly, looking at the 7-foot-tall black bear, looming behind me and drooling. His face instantly turned pale. I stepped forward. I felt the once peaceful atmosphere of the mountain change. A thick, eerie fog was spreading around us. But I wasn't afraid. I looked at the black-robed man and spoke one word at a time. I said I'm not going. And my friends don't seem very welcoming either. The man in the suit swallowed hard, looking at the hundreds of glowing green and red eyes surrounding them. His legs were shaking uncontrollably. Dr. Lu, let's talk this out. We can talk. I smiled. This feeling felt damn good. Oh, now you want to talk? I pointed to the figures standing in front of me, my heart feeling much steadier. I looked at the man in the black robe and didn't say another word. The look that black-robed man gave before leaving, I'll never forget it as long as I live. He pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses and gave a sinister little laugh. That gaze made my skin crawl. He was definitely up to no good. Lu Chuan, you will come looking for me. He left those nonsensical words behind and took his 2 half-dead lackeys, scurrying back into the depths of the forest. I watched his retreating back, feeling uneasy. I had a feeling this wasn't over. Grandma walked over, still clutching a half-eaten spirit fruit. She calmly patted my shoulder. Don't mind that lunatic. His reputation around here is trash. He goes by Priest Qingshu. Never does anything decent. I gave a forced laugh. Grandma, you really have a big heart. After that storm, my little courtyard became a total sensation. I originally thought that by sending that big Buddha away, I could have a few days of peace. I didn't expect that was only the beginning. Early the next morning, Huang Da's wife came over again. This time she wasn't here to repay a favor, but was holding a round, prickly thing, wiping tears away in a panic. Lu, quick, save my neighbor. He's gone and played himself to death. I looked down and fell silent. It was a hedgehog curled into a ball, covered in dense quills. But this time, he was covered in colorful plastic bags and a bunch of messy glass shards. Did he go clubbing at a landfill? Mrs. Huang sobbed. He's a glutton. He crawled into a snack bag thrown by a tourist and got stuck. When he tried to roll away, all this trash got stuck in his flesh. Now the wounds are festering. I sighed. and resignedly took out my medical kit. With the experience from the black bear surgery, this kind of minor debridement was like a walk in the park for me, piece of cake, although my hand would occasionally shake. When I remembered Priest Qingshu's eyes, once I focused my spiritual energy, my mind became steady. After successfully rescuing 4 neighbors, my reputation in the back mountains completely exploded. My home officially became the designated clinic for supernatural creatures. Today it was a limping black bear, waddling over, carrying a massive wild ginseng as payment. Tomorrow it was an owl who had a broken heart, and kept trying to bash its head against a tree, brought in by its partner. The day after was even more ridiculous. A snake spirit with hundreds of years of cultivation had swallowed a whole dead pig out of greed, only to find the pig's stomach was full of undigested stones. It was choking so hard its eyes were rolling back. Every day when I opened my eyes, there was a long queue at the door. Creatures that flew, ran on the ground, and burrowed, the variety of species, was like a live filming of Animal Planet. Grandma was surprised at first, but then she got used to it. She even set up a few sheds in the yard to serve as a temporary waiting area for these patients. Chuan Chuan, you've really found a second career here. You used to save people in the city. Now you're back in the village saving immortals. The old woman fed millet to a magpie with a broken wing. While sighing with emotion, I had a bitter face, complaining wildly in my head. I was a promising surgeon from a top-tier city hospital. Now I'm reduced to giving laxatives to a snake spirit. This career shift makes me want to get a veterinary license. Just when I thought life would continue to be this chaotic and noisy, Baiyan and Chijiu came back, but this time they weren't in their animal forms. The moment the round courtyard gate was pushed open, I was completely stunned. The man walking in front wore a long white robe, his hair tied casually behind his head. That face looked even better than a big movie star's, especially those golden eyes, cold yet possessing an undeniable aura. That was Baiyan. Behind him followed a burly man in fiery red martial attire, with thick eyebrows and large eyes, covered in rippling muscles. He looked like a tough character who could kill a bull with one punch. That was Chijiu. I froze on the spot, still holding a tube for the squirrel's gastric lavage. You transformed? Chijiu laughed boisterously, showing a row of white teeth. Heh, divine doctor. Isn't this easier for talking? I look more human this way. Baiyan greeted me politely. Every gesture of his showed he was clearly different from us ordinary humans. Dr. Liu, I hope you've been well. I put down the tube and wiped my sweat. Just walk on in. Which great immortal overate or hit a tree this time? His face darkened. The yard that was noisy a moment ago instantly went silent. All the small animals were too scared to make a sound. It's not that. Lu Chuan, the mountain god, has disappeared. I was stunned. Mountain god? This mountain really has a god. Chijiu leaned in, his voice low like muffled thunder. Not just disappeared. The spiritual pulse of the mountain is about to break. He pointed toward the back mountain. I looked over. The once lush green mountains now seemed to be covered in a faint, uncomfortable gray haze. That aura was exactly the same as the malevolent energy on Priest Qingshu. Ever since the mountain god went missing, the dark energy has begun to spread wildly. Baiyan frowned. Many creatures are going mad because the spiritual pulse is drying up. If the pulse breaks completely, all the creatures on this mountain, including this village, will likely be swallowed by the dark energy. My heart skipped a beat. That eerie smile of Qingshu immediately flashed in my mind. Was it that black-robed man? I asked, and he nodded. Baiyan nodded. He has coveted the mountain god's power for a long time. Chijiu looked at me anxiously. We've searched everywhere. Only the spiritual energy in your body can see through and cleanse that dark energy. Lu, we have to rescue the mountain god. To rescue the backbone of this mountain. I fell silent. To be honest, I was scared. I was just a guy who used a scalpel. Now you want me to save an entire ecosystem? This jump from surgery directly to geological disaster rescue. I just wanted to be a salted fish in the village, patching up these fuzzy little animals every day. That was fine. But when I turned my head and looked at the courtyard, at all those small animals looking at me with trust, the magpie, the black bear with the bad leg, and the 3 little weasel pups circling my ankles, if the pulse really breaks, they will all die. I remembered that after that medical accident, it was these creatures that made me pick up the knife again, making me feel like I wasn't a useless person. The creatures of the mountain saved my heart. I have to save their lives too. Fine. Stop looking at me like that. I sighed, resignedly walking back into the house. I'm going to pack my things. I returned to my room and briskly packed my medical bag. I stuffed in some special, disinfecting alcohol mixed with spiritual energy, a demon-breaking solution I'd made these past few days. I carefully took out the spiritual needle that Chiju had given me, that silver needle. I tucked it into my collar. Finally, I tucked that salt-eating grass into my coat, feeling a warm current instantly protecting my heart. I don't care about some Taoist priest. Anyway, my scalpel can save lives, and it can also make him suffer. I slung the bag over my shoulder and walked out, looking at Bai Yen and Chiju standing side by side. Let's go. I took a deep breath, my tone more determined than ever. Let's go save this mountain god. Bai Yen looked at me, a hint of relief flashing in his golden eyes. Your willingness to go is our greatest hope. I just hope the mountain god isn't too heavy. My scrawny body can't carry an immortal. Chiju laughed loudly, lifting a large axe from the ground. Disgusting. You've got me. The sunset's afterglow stretched our shadows very long. I looked back at Grandma. She was standing at the door waving to me. Chuan Chuan, come back early for dinner. I'll stew some ribs for you tonight. I waved back, turned around and followed those red and white figures, marching toward the deep mountains shrouded in gray fog. The road to the abandoned temple was more of a pain than I imagined. It was a wild path hidden in the deep forest, with grass taller than a person. There was nowhere to step. Carrying my medical bag, I had to use a stick to probe ahead with every step, terrified of stepping on something I shouldn't. The further we went, the darker the light became. The sky was gloomy, as if it were about to rain. There was a chill in the air, the kind of damp cold that seeps into your bones. Couldn't help but shiver. The surrounding trees grew in bizarre shapes, their branches swaying wildly, looking like ghostly shadows reaching out in the dark. On the way, I saw several dead wild rabbits and mountain goats. These small animals were wrapped in a faint black aura, their flesh already blackened and rotting. Those were the marks of dark energy erosion. My heart grew heavier. The pollution in this mountain was worse than I thought. After walking for nearly 2 hours, a dilapidated temple finally appeared. This was the abandoned temple. More than half of the walls had collapsed, and the doors and windows were long gone. Thick cobwebs hung over the threshold. A clay statue's head was still tilted in the dirt, half its face buried in weeds. Those hollow eyes looked even more eerie under the flashlight. This is pretty creepy. There wasn't a sound in this ghost of a place. Not even the chirp of a cricket. The silence made my skin crawl. I entered the temple and circled the collapsed statue. At the base of the wall behind the statue, I found a rusted iron door, hidden among weeds and piles of rubble. The iron door wasn't locked. I reached out and pushed. A loud creak echoed far through the dead silent temple. The thick, earthy smell and the stench of decay hit me. It was so strong it made my head spin. Behind the door was a pitch-black tunnel, so narrow only one person could squeeze through sideways. I'll go down and check. You guys back me up from up here, I said to Bai Yen and Chiju. Chiju scratched his head anxiously. It's late at night. It's too dangerous down there. Maybe I should lead the way. I waved my hand. With your bulk, if you get stuck, I'd have to waste effort pulling you out. You'd just be a hindrance. Be careful about everything. If you notice anything wrong, come up immediately. The stone steps in the tunnel were wet and slippery, covered in dark green moss. Stepping on them was like stepping on soap. In the middle of the cavern was a huge pool of water. Countless sharp stalactites hung from the ceiling. Dripping water drip, drip. The water in the pool was a shiny black, with black bubbles constantly rising to the surface, emitting a pungent, foul stench. Wisps of dark energy rose from the pool, filling the entire space, and making my chest feel tight. In the very center of the pool, rooted there, was a 1,000-year-old tree that had completely died. The trunk was covered with blood-red talismans, swaying slightly in the cold wind. It looked incredibly suffocating, and on that dead tree, held by 4 thick iron chains, was a person locked tight. The man had a head of white hair that reached his ankles. His collarbones were pierced directly by the chains, pinning him to the trunk. His head was down, his face hidden, but he looked different from those dark things. He seemed like a proper deity who had suffered a great calamity, completely out of place with the surrounding evil. Every time the chains swayed, it was accompanied by a heart-wrenching moan. My heart sank. This must be the imprisoned deity Bai Yen and the others mentioned. I summoned my courage and edged forward a few steps, wanting to see his wounds clearly. He seemed to sense something, and slightly lifted his head. His eyes looked gentle, but they were filled with bloodshot veins from pain. Suddenly, I stepped on something hard. I looked down, and saw a wooden token dropped in the mud. I picked it up and wiped away the mud. Under the flashlight, 2 words were carved on it, Qingshu. My pupils shrank, and my heart almost stopped for a beat. It really was that dead priest's handiwork. Priest Qingshu. This dead priest was indeed holding back a big move here. I knew it that day in the yard. The look he gave me was definitely up to no good. While I was staring at the token in a daze, a cold laugh that gave me goosebumps suddenly came from behind. I thought I'd catch those 2 foxes. I didn't expect you, this little brat, to deliver yourself first. I spun around, nearly dropping my flashlight. In the darkness, a figure in a black Taoist robe slowly emerged. It was indeed Priest Qingshu, whom I had seen at Grandma's house. Except now, his hypocritical facade was gone, replaced by a face full of malice and greed. Under the flashlight's beam, his sinister smile made my skin crawl. It's you. I gripped my medical bag tight, my heart sinking to the floor. What did you do to the mountain god? What did I do? Qingshu narrowed his eyes, looking at the chained man in the center of the pool. His eyes filled with fanaticism. I am helping him find release. The spiritual pulse of this entire mountain is made of life essence. He's held it for so many years. It's my turn now. You're just thieving. Yet you make it sound so grand. You're way too shameless to call yourself a priest. Little brat, what do you know? He spoke as if he'd heard the biggest joke, his voice suddenly rising. I have cultivated for 200 years, seeing my lifespan nearing its end, yet unable to break through. Why does he, born as a god, get to enjoy the offerings of this whole mountain and endless longevity? The muscles on the face of the man in the pool were twitching from anger and pain. Since heaven is unfair, I will take it myself. I used 100 years of cultivation to set this spirit-draining array, channeling the dark energy of the underworld to slowly grind down his divine body and sever his life force. Once I have sucked him dry, I will become an immortal god. This entire mountain will have to obey me. I broke into a cold sweat hearing that. This old priest was truly insane. His heart was pitch black. So, the injury on Bai Yen was also your doing? That white fox. He flicked his fingernails dismissively. He had bad luck. He ran into the painted Qilin I sent to the Eagle King. He's lucky to be alive. I thought he was a goner, but I didn't expect a mere mortal like you to actually heal him. The way he looked at me suddenly changed, as if he were looking at some rare treasure. He even licked his dry, cracked lips. I'm really curious. Maybe if I take you back and cut you open, my plan could be accelerated by a few years. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and several streaks of pitch-black mist flew out of his sleeve. In midair, they transformed into several sharp blades, shooting directly toward my heart. I was scared out of my wits. My mind was screaming for help. This time, I was really going to be turned into a pincushion. At the critical moment, without even thinking, I reached for my collar and pulled out the silver protective hair Qingyi had given me. With a single thought, the protective hair sensed my intent. Amidst the flowing fluorescent light, it actually transformed into a long, slender silver needle. Help! I closed my eyes and let out a shout, throwing the silver needle out. With a flash of light, the silver needle rapidly expanded in the air, turning into a semi-transparent silver barrier that blocked the path in front of me. The black arrows slammed into the barrier, emitting a series of ear-piercing grinding sounds, finally dissipating into puffs of black smoke. Priest Qingshu's face darkened. He gave a cold snort. So it's something left behind by that old fox. Let's see how many times he can protect you. At this moment, I couldn't even care about being afraid. Professional instinct actually overrode fear in that instant. I stared intently at the massive array behind him, at the black water and the dead tree. I stared at the sections of the chains emitting black smoke. Though I didn't understand magic arrays, I could see that the energy there was the most chaotic. It was like an unstable, stitched-up wound. That was the only weak point. I gripped the scalpel in my medical bag. My heart was racing, but my hands didn't shake at all. Just a remnant of energy. You think it can stop me? Qingshu sneered. The black energy in his hand instantly pressed down. The silver barrier formed by Qingyi's hair made a bone-chilling creaking sound. It looked like it was about to shatter. I was frantic with worry. This thing won't last more than a few seconds. What do I do? What do I do? I can't just sit here and wait for death. My eyes darted quickly around the entire cavern. Finally, my gaze fixed on the center of the pool, on that 1,000-year-old dead tree. Though I knew nothing of mystical arrays, as a doctor, I could see at a glance that it was the center of the lesion. The dead tree was the array core. If I cut out this tumor, maybe I could turn the tide. A crazy idea exploded in my mind. I grabbed the scalpel from my medical bag, and that silver hair needle given to me by Chingy. The moment the barrier was shattered, I didn't retreat. Instead, I stayed low and lunged forward. Qingshu clearly hadn't expected that an unarmed mortal like me would dare to take the initiative. He froze for a split second. In that instant, I had already reached the edge of the pool. I leaped onto the exposed roots of the dead tree. Cold air surged up from the soles of my feet, making me shiver. The dark energy in the pool was like flies sensing blood, swarming toward me like crazy. I felt like my own blood was about to be frozen into ice shards. Fortunately, the Chien herb in my pocket emitted a surge of burning heat, temporarily driving away the cold and giving my stiff limbs back their strength. I didn't dare stop as I climbed the trunk with cold hands and feet, reaching the man whose collarbones were pierced by the chains. Up close, I saw the chains piercing his body weren't ordinary. They were covered in dense, writhing black runes. Those chains were like parasites, continuously draining golden divine power from his body, channeling it through the trunk and into the ground. This was the most fatal bleeding point. How dare you? Behind me came Qingshu's furious roar. He had realized what I was doing. Several streaks of black energy turned into swords and shot toward my back. I had no time to dodge. I could only grit my teeth and plunge the scalpel deeply into the junction between the chain and the tree trunk. The pure spiritual energy within me surged through the tip of the blade. I cut through it, but several black energy swords pierced my shoulder and back. The immense pain made my vision go dark. A sweet, metallic taste rose in my throat, but I refused to let go. In this moment, it felt as if I were back in that operating room that haunted my nightmares. The ear-piercing alarm was ringing in my ears. That day, I couldn't save that young man, but today I absolutely will not let go. I let out a roar, pulled the silver hair from my collar, and stabbed it directly into the gap in the chain as a catheter, using it as a needle for a reverse blood transfusion. Crack! A crisp sound of shattering echoed through the cavern. The moment the chain broke, golden light erupted instantly, illuminating the entire gloomy cave. The black energy dissipated the moment it touched the light, accompanied by a sizzling sound. My path to immortality. Qingshu let out a scream. Half of his body smoked under the golden light. Seeing the situation was lost, he gritted his teeth, abandoning his quest, and turned into a blurry shadow, vanishing into a dark passage deep in the cave. His trail was gone. It was finally over. The tension within me finally snapped. Exhaustion hit me like a tidal wave. My legs went weak. My hands let go of the trunk, and I fell straight down. But the cold pool water and the hard stones I expected never came. I fell into a warm, sturdy embrace. I struggled to open my eyes a crack and saw an incredibly handsome face. Those eyes held a gentle, divine glow. It was the mountain god I had saved. He held me, radiating a warm aura that was rapidly healing the injuries in my body. Thank you, little doctor of the mortal realm. He smiled at me, his voice exceptionally pleasant to hear. I am the god of this mountain. My name is... I twitched the corner of my mouth. I wanted to play it cool and say, just remember to pay the bill. But my eyelids were just too heavy. Everything went black, and I lost consciousness completely. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying on my own familiar wooden bed. Sunlight streamed in through the window, feeling warm on the blanket. Grandma was sitting by the bed, clutching a wet towel, wiping my face every now and then. Seeing my eyes move, Grandma finally breathed a long sigh of relief. You brat, your courage knows no bounds. You've been asleep for 3 days and nights. I tried to prop myself up, only to find my whole body aching, completely devoid of strength. Don't move, lie back down. Grandma quickly pressed down on my shoulders. The young man from the barefoot clinic said, you overexerted yourself and need lots of rest. A young man from the barefoot clinic? My brain was still a bit foggy. Yeah, the one in the white shirt. Quite handsome too. Looks very refined, and seems to know a lot about medicine. Grandma curled her lip, acting like she'd seen it all. He called himself Bai Yen. That was the white fox I had saved. Though he hasn't fully recovered, he brought a lot of lingji and herbs over. Said you're the savior of their whole clan. And insisted I feed them to you. Savior, my foot. Bai Yen wasn't just bringing herbs. He was probably afraid I'd kick the bucket, and there'd be no one left to treat the mountain animals. I lay on my pillow, staring blankly at the ceiling beams. Everything that happened in the cave felt like an absurd nightmare, but the dull ache in my back reminded me. It was all real. Lu Chuan, an unlucky guy who almost lost his license over a single case, actually drove away that dead priest, Qingshu, and saved a deity in the process. If I put this in my year-end summary, the hospital director would probably send me to psychiatry first. Oh, right. Grandma suddenly remembered something, leaning in mysteriously. A couple of days ago, near that old temple, there was a golden glow. The villagers say the mountain god has returned. The incense at the temple is extremely popular now. Even our doorstep has people coming to pay their respects. I smiled, gave a casual reply, and said no more. I stayed in bed for a full week, chugging countless bowls of bitter medicinal soup, before I could finally walk again. During this time, my little yard became a hub for get-well gifts. Huangde came every day, and Hui brought a jar of honey, saying it was to replenish my vital energy. The barefoot clinic guy sent a pile of sparkly, glowing colored stones, insisting they have beauty benefits, and told me to put them under my pillow. I looked at that pile of so-called beauty stones that would surely cause a stiff neck. A fox's sense of aesthetics is truly unique. The most ridiculous one was the snake spirit I cured of indigestion. He sheepishly brought over a semi-transparent snake skin. I just shed this. You can tailor it into underwear. It's invulnerable and keeps you cool. I looked at that cold, slimy skin, my mouth twitching. I never want to try such a bizarre piece of clothing in my life. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh as I accepted all these weird gifts of gratitude. The forest yard was lively every day. There was licorice drying in the yard, and little foxes and weasels scurrying everywhere. I was sprawling on a lounge chair in the sun, with the chien herb in my arms to keep warm, when a long-awaited phone call came in. It was my old hospital buddy, that talkative OBGYN. Chuan, you're famous. Your case has been cleared. You're not responsible. Do you know that? His shouting made my eardrums ache. I nearly dropped the phone. I squinted and replied, "What's the fuss? I'm busy bonding with a squirrel here." "Bonding my ass. That surgical accident of yours. It's all been cleared up." His voice over the phone was trembling with excitement. The patient's family members were scumbags. For the insurance money, they secretly gave the patient illegal drugs brought back from abroad before the surgery. The forensic doctor did a new appraisal. The cause of death was drug interaction leading to heart failure. It has nothing to do with your operation. Now the people who cursed you online have turned around. The hospital's social media is flooded with apologies. The director is nagging me every day, asking when you're coming back to the city. He even said he'd give you a bonus, and your position is still waiting for you. I gripped my phone and froze. The truth is out. I'm not a killer. I didn't lose that life. The nightmare that had weighed on me for so long has finally dissipated. I took a long, deep breath, looking at the chaos in my yard. Chi Zhou was arm wrestling some wild boars in the backyard, winning and howling like a maniac. That magpie with the broken wing I healed was perched on the old locust tree, singing out-of-tune mountain songs. There was no smell of disinfectant here, only the fragrance of plants and trees. I suddenly felt that office full of cameras, disinfectant and endless disputes was very, very far away. I picked up the phone and slowly typed, "I'm not coming back. I found something more important here." The other side was silent for a long time, and finally only replied with a "fine," followed by a big thumbs-up emoji. I put my phone away and took a long, deep stretch. Every bone felt refreshed. Just then, a heavy panting came from the yard entrance. I looked up and smiled. It was a round, clumsy-looking panda, sitting at the door, clutching its belly and whimpering. When it saw me come out, it tearfully pointed to its stomach, which was as round as a ball. It had clearly overeaten. "Doctor, I think I was greedy again. It hurts." I stood up, dusted off my hands, and picked up the stethoscope nearby. A breeze transformed from the mountain god's spirit circled the yard light-heartedly, bringing a refreshing coolness. I chuckled at his round belly. "All right, let me rub your belly to help you digest. The next patient is already on the way."